Insurance is absolutely something that you absolutely have to have if you have youth sport participants in anything. But another thing I think is really paramount is liability waivers. And I think a lot of folks think that liability waivers are sort of a one-size-fits-all and it can be applied to anything. But liability waivers, it's actually every state views them a little bit differently. So we could have a liability waiver in a particular state, I'll say Wisconsin, where I practice law, and that liability waiver, it holds up in court. And the court says, yep, you got injured, you came and said, we want to sue you for negligence, but you signed a liability waiver, we're going to throw this case out. That same liability waiver might not hold up in a state like California, just because the analysis is going to be different about whether or not the liability waiver is permissible. And some states, a little more friendly, some states, a little less friendly in terms of liability waivers. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. You can't take one liability waiver and use it everywhere in the country. A client of mine that I work with, so he hosts NIL camps. So essentially what he does is he has college athletes come out and teach middle schoolers, high schoolers, whether it's football, basketball, soccer, anything like that. And one of the things that I said to him is we have to have liability waivers in addition to insurance, obviously. And the liability waivers, they've got to change. We're in California, it's got to be different than if we're in Georgia, because the state will view those liability waivers slightly differently depending on the particular doctrine in that state. And that's not a one-size-fits-all thing. It's even if you're doing the same event in Georgia or Florida, the liability waiver may have to change. And I think liability waivers can help. They're not a blanket. They're going to get you out of everything. But certainly ordinary negligence in some contexts, yes. But again, going back to my prior point, training coaches, making sure that you have as safe of an environment as you can, that's the best way forward. It's much easier for no one to get hurt than for someone to get hurt and you to say, well, actually, we've got this liability waiver, so you don't have any real legal claims. It's a lot easier for just no one to get hurt in the first place.
Right.